because that's a
2 seconds is
thing.
over.
Mississippi 2.
We are apparently live. Welcome to our Banter-Ama AMA. You can ask me anything. How it works is you make your way down the beach, just like
Char
where
just
I'm pointing to
teleported
right
in.
now. So you just come all the way down there, right down to about here. And then my dogs bark. That's how it works.
I'm just going to lower the
Static
volume.
threat just teleported in.
Oh, Arnwolf, you getting in early?
No, just lowering the volume.
Gotcha. Uh, yeah, and that's
Why do
basically it, right? And then I'll be happy to answer any of your questions.
Why do we
Dozer, you
still
hitting
hear
the volume
Piglet?
too? Gotcha.
Yeah, I know.
Uh, yeah, so yeah, basically. Oh, Ark, you've got a question. Go ahead.
Okay, I
Unless
thought
you're
someone
just
else was
adjusting
gonna, so I
volume
was gonna.
too.
No, I thought other people were going, so I wanted to give someone else a chance to go first. But so I
Go
normally
for it.
ask you, throw a fastball, but let me throw some softballs for a change. So
Oh,
there's been a lot of YouTube videos from leather, which you're talking about Jasmine with VR or Mateo. They've been talking recently about, where we're at as far as like we're right on the
Designer
cusp
girl
of,
has glitched
breaking
into
through,
the
the industry.
matrix.
And what they were talking about is directly in connection with the Batman Arkham Asylum game coming out. Everybody's giving it just like amazing reviews, like, oh, it's amazing, blah blah blah, and like all that stuff. I'm sure you guys have seen, more or less the same reviews. The reason why I bring that up is because I wonder if, from your perspective, as someone who's a leader in
Zero
the industry,
siphon is too late.
are we on that cusp that the industry is kind of now maturing? Because a problem that's existed in XR, I've said this on Twitter and other places, and other people have too. One of the professional problems in the industry is there's been a lot of overpromising and under-delivering. Not just, Pimax. I mean, Meta has done things. I mean, we could
yes.
go on a laundry list of people that have said, we're going to have this. And I mean, what you get is just like, really? But it
Yeah.
feels like from a lot of things that have happened recently, we're starting to have much more mature, professional development, both at a hardware and software level, as far as like, okay, we have expectations. This is not just, completely inside of our own ecosystem where when something happens, it only hurts us internally and kind of slightly embarrasses the industry, to the point where,
Gotcha.
okay, we've got obligations to outside investors to actually deliver on product and all that stuff. I mean, I'm not a high-end capitalist or any of that kind of stuff, but there's certain arguments you can
HBR,
make in favor of it.
pronounced
And
as
this is kind of
Hubbara,
one of those
just
things
dropped
where,
in
okay,
from another
the industry
dimension.
isn't maturing to the point where it feels that obligation to actually deliver to the market and, in a positive way, as far as like, we're going to have a self-sustaining growth curve as far as industry growth, if you know what I mean. So if you want to, run with that, and are we on that side of things where the industry is going to start growing in a responsible, manner, if you catch where I'm going with that?
Thank you. And that is a softball question, as you put it.
Compared to my
um,
normal ones.
yeah, maybe. I mean, it's an interesting one, right? Joe, it's funny. I remember back in God knows. I'm sure there's instances of this before it, but I remember back in 2019 when I was at OC6 and they were giving out T-shirts and hoodies, and on them they said, "The time is now." I think there's kind of a hype train that we kind of always need to be on, and we always need to push ourselves towards. And us internally, I guess maybe we're a bit too connected to it, right? So we tend to get caught up in it a little bit, and yeah, I mean, I think are we on the cusp? I guess
Awful Moccasin has
that's the
logged into the
fundamental question that you've
mainframe.
asked. Are we on the cusp here today? Ah, I don't think this is the I don't think this is the you know, the high time. I don't think this is the massive explosion, right? When I think about 2021 and I think about the volume of people in VR at that point, right, which has probably been higher than it is, let's say, today. That was a massive peak, right? It was actually the second significant peak that VR had had. Back in 2016 was the first, right? That was kind of the first bubble, if you will, that a lot of hype was driven around, almost a lot of investment at that stage. And I think, yeah, I mean, the truth is, um, there's a lot of external factors which unfortunately have a massive influence on this kind of fledgling industry, right? We've got COVID pandemics, we've got tech market crashes, we've got 5 times crypto crashes and all sorts of great stuff. And we've got the cost of living going through the roof. God knows, it feels like you hear a lot more stories these days about how people can barely afford to support themselves on a full-time job, let alone a whole family, and buy a house and have a car and all of those things that people used to have. So I think anything really that's new, that's innovative, that's trying to be disruptive is gonna struggle in an environment like that, because how do you justify the value to somebody who's maybe struggling, right? I think right now, the most viable option, probably by a clean mile, is Meta. Um, and I point at myself because I'm using a Meta headset right now, and a majority of people in VR probably are. And the truth is, we probably need competition there. That's probably the most important thing that we should see. And I think that's a good signal that there's a lot of interest being driven in, and that flywheel is starting to spin and things are starting to gather steam. And we've already kind of had two of those waves, let's say, of where things are overhyped and then you come down. It's the curve of mass adoption, right? And we're on that uphill climb right now. Whether right now is
Useful
the
red is
cusp
wanted
of it
in
or not,
several other spaces.
oh, I don't
Take
know if I
cover
could
and
say that,
shoot.
right? I think you need multiple players in the space. There's been a growing trend that Moore's law doesn't apply to VR, and it's actually quite the opposite. I think that's very damaging. I'm going to put my hand up and say I've said this publicly before, and I'll say it again. If the headset costs more than $1,000, that's it. Especially if you have to also pay for other hardware, other peripherals, other stuff like that. That's great and it's fantastic, and you've done something that's an innovation. Will that product exist in 5 years? Honestly, I don't know. And I think that can be a really big risk to consumers, um, because you kind of have a lot of people who are driven by commercial interests, right? And they want to try and corner their own little slice of this space. But honestly, what we've seen time and time again, even with just Meta, is that they deprecate a whole platform. The whole thing is gone. Everything you've done is just burnt, right? And what's a shame about that, right, is that they're simultaneously trying to lock you into, this forever ecosystem. And if a headset disappears, instead of having people who are invested in the future of this and who want to be able to upgrade and continue to invest in more content and all of that kind of stuff, you end up with people feeling like, well, I've kind of been burnt, and I feel a little bit like, you know, I've been scammed, I've been screwed over, and that's
Pause.
just
A
a
real
natural
human,
way to
a
feel
real
whenever
human
you've sort of
actually
put
joined
money
this
into a
mix.
product and that product has
Now
unfortunately
everyone
become
act like a human.
discontinued or something like that, right? And
Mhm.
you're desperately trying to make good use of it, but its days are numbered. And there's that is a very high risk that can happen with, I imagine, probably almost any competitor, regardless of how big they are, how much resource they have. We've often seen examples of where big companies try to do something but fail, right? So having all of the resource in the world doesn't necessarily equate to a success in that regard. And I think we need successes. We need people to be able to deliver on competing hardware, right? We need a headset that can either match the price or the feature set or the content library of the Quest, because without at least probably two of those three matched, they're just never going to compete. They're going to pale in comparison, unfortunately. Um, and Meta, they are on an aggressive path. And even if AI has become an increasing target of their focus, it's going to be tough for anybody to get close to what they've done for the same
Big
price
B
and
energy is
and for
here.
all that you get, all the value that you get in that. So, yeah, I mean, it is a tall order for anybody to be able to just keep up with Meta and to be able to get a device into production uh, and actually deploy it. And by that time, it hasn't become defunct because it's already out of date and last gen, and the next Meta device beats it on all the major metrics like refresh rate and resolution and all of this kind of stuff. So on the cusp. I wouldn't necessarily describe us as that right now, but who knows, right? Maybe Pico decide we're gonna actually launch in the US. That could be a big deal because that kind of maybe comes close to hitting two of those three items I think it needs to hit in order for it to have a chance to sell even a fraction of the the number of units that Meta has sold, right? Which is probably upwards of 25 million at this point. Probably closer to 30 million if you include Quest 3 in that assessment as well. Somebody needs to sell more than 1 million units in response to that, and I'm not sure that anybody else really has come close. Oh God, I realize how dreary this all sounds. I mean, this is unfortunately just the state of play that we're in, right? And honestly, I think mostly what's happened in the last few years has been driven by external factors, right? It's been the tech market crash. It's been mass layoffs hitting the game industry particularly hard. It's the crypto crashes, it's the cost of living going up, it's all of these things really that are holding back VR and holding back a lot of different things, I would imagine, right now. It doesn't really matter what they are, right? And I would say that once there's a lot more signs that, those things are slowing down and unemployment is dropping and we're not hearing as much about mass layoffs, at that point that's a time to be hopeful. I think that's a time to sort of look again towards the future and want to be able to do this. In the meantime, what we're more likely to see is that the much more popular devices will be the subsidized ones, and with what Meta's probably planning with the Quest 3S or whatever, that's what that's going to be. It's going to be a subsidized device designed to block the bottom end of the market, right? So that nobody else is able to come in at an entry point lower than that. And that's what I imagine a lot of people are going to want. And a lot of people who've bought Quest 2s are likely to upgrade to a headset like that, right? Because it's probably going to be more economically priced than even the Quest 3 right now. Like, I imagine that in a lot of respects, the Quest 3 could do a lot better if it were that little bit cheaper. But it shouldn't be, right? Because honestly, I imagine that the profit margins on this hardware are razor thin, even at the price that it's at. But yeah, I believe a device like, as far as I estimate, and I'm one of them, but maybe 100 to 150,000 people still own an Apple Vision Pro. Maybe less than 1,000 of those still use it daily, and that's really unfortunate, and I think when it comes to Apple, uh, they probably knew that that was going to be a possibility, and I believe that's also a major factor of the economic crisis I guess we all find ourselves in. That's sort of teetering on the edge for the last, I guess, 5 years straight, right? Pretty much, which is a long time, I guess, when you think about it. But $3,500 price tag as an entry level, right? That is just enormous, really, for a lot of people, and you can understand that. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. For a lot of developers, I believe it's been tough on an Apple Vision Pro. I think the expectation with those users is that we've spent a lot on the content. Now we expect to see uh, the sort of prices that you would see on the iOS App Store or on the iPad Store. Apps and games for $5 or less. And developers, obviously, who want to be able to see success in this space, are looking at it more as a console, and they'd like to be able to price their titles at the sort of $20 plus price tag. So there's a bit of friction there. There's a conflict of interest to some degree, and if developers can't see success on the platform, that can be one of the most important things, I guess, right? Because the platform itself is measured by the success of the people who use it. So that being said, we're still going to build for it because we'll snag those whatever 1,000 daily active users and get them in here. Why not, right? And I think I think honestly, what's going on right now is that game devs who are in VR, they're the troops, right? They're persevering. In some cases, they're running on empty, running on fumes, and just barely being able to try and innovate in this space. And those of them that are kind of lucky enough to make something that ends up being a hit, that's fantastic. And they can maybe reinvest and have a sustainable future in terms of what they're doing. That's exactly what we need to see, and we need to see that more and more. And I guess we need to probably try and support those game devs, right? Yeah, I mean it's nice to say, but at the end of the day, that's kind of what we need to do. And we do, I guess, right? A lot of us do, right? I don't know how many games I've got on Steam that I haven't yet played, but maybe on occasion I'll tend to go for a humble bundle rather than just pay the full price on Steam. And maybe that's possibly part of the problem. But the truth
Cheryl
is,
G1 just stumbled
we're in
into
a
our
we're in a
virtual
time
realm.
where times
Someone
are
hold
tough,
their hand. They
and
look
people
lost.
want to be able to get better value, right? So lower priced hardware, better sales and deals on the content for said hardware is the best chance I think we have of being able to accelerate our position as to where we are now. But yeah, there you go. You got it. You asked. I gave you my opinion.
Yep.
I hope it's good.
So you're saying that the Western economies allowing our economic systems to devolve into monopolistic feudal systems was a bad idea.
I'll tell you this. The app to use this device is now called Meta Horizon. Okay, that's
Mm.
that's part of the problem,
Yeah.
right?
Anyway.
Uh,
Which is
but yeah, monopolies do that, right?
Yeah.
The customers, they end up competing with them directly, and that's never
Yep.
good because that just hurts innovation mostly because it locks everything into they're the only ones that get become the anointed ones, let's say, right? And we're going to have to contend with that as much as anybody else, right? Horizon Worlds is always going to have an upper hand over any other platform, regardless of how established or how successful it is, and that's anti-competitive. That's definitely
Mhm.
anti-competitive, at the minimum. I don't know if it's in the realm of kind of antitrust or any kind of uh, formal litigation, because the truth is the platform in VR, I guess Meta could argue, is an isolated one, and it doesn't have enough of a user base yet for those sorts of things, I believe, to become an issue, right? But
Mhm.
yeah, I don't know. Of course, everyone's commercial interests are going to drive what they're doing here, and yeah, uh, I just wish that was more distributed, right? Less centralized. There was more people who were seeing success, more evidence of that, and especially in the hardware. I think that's one area that's severely lacking, right? I feel like it's a moment of silence every now and again for the next device that may have fallen, right, and may not be coming through. And right, Lynx maybe is the most recent example of that. There was an announcement recently that some expected fundraising didn't come through, and that's sad, right? Because Lynx is kind of the homegrown option here that like many other things, maybe had a chance to be able to compete with Meta. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I'm waffling at this point, but I guess that's why I'm here. That
Mhm.
was a good 20-minute one. Nice. Happy days. No, that's great. Thanks, Ark. Any final thoughts, comments? Nope. You good? Awesome. Great. Well, look, I'll remind anybody who's joined late, and honestly, guys, I appreciate you humoring me because I'm looking around and it's just the regular crew, everybody that was at the event last night, right? So,
Woo.
uh, yeah. But anyway, thanks for humoring me. If you do have any questions, anything you want to talk about, anything you'd like to bring up, topics that are related to banter or otherwise, I'd love to talk to you about them, and we can have a chat. So you can head on up here, up to that little place that I'm pointing at there, and I'll answer your questions. Or I can waffle. That's another thing. I have always got something to waffle about. I've probably already been waffling about it a little bit, but yeah, I guess this one is probably more for our space makers who might be interested in that. But honestly, I feel like it's good for everybody because I feel like it's something that everybody enjoys. But uh, in some spaces, you can have objects that if you pick them up, other people can see that you've picked them up, right? We refer to these as network synced objects. So uh, I'm sure, as a lot of you know, they can be quite temperamental. But as part of a new system that we're working on, we've begun work rebuilding network synced objects today. So that's something I'm sure a lot of you will be able to look forward to, right? That hopefully should give us a much more stable option to just make a thing be a thing, but not just for you, for everyone, right? It's a thing for everyone. You pick it up, you throw it, they catch it, they throw it back, you miss. That's the thing. It sounds simple, but that's all we need. That's all we want. And yeah, I mean, apart from that, we have a new. What else? Today we took the first steps towards integrating the new physics-based character controller that we've got in. This is going to blow the likes of Boneworks and Bone Lab out of the water. Our physics character controller is going to be off the wall. It's going to be less about being a perfect physics simulation and more about being a lot of fun. And it's also a perfect physics simulation because Naheem, who's building it, he's a bit of a perfectionist, I guess, when it comes to this sort of stuff. So a lot of these things are starting
Static
to, all these
thread is too vague.
massive puzzle pieces are starting to kind of come together now. And in the next couple of weeks, in fact, a tentative date. I mentioned this last night at Space Makers as well. But a tentative date for an official launch for Banter is the 15th of October. So stay tuned. Hopefully, all goes well. We're going to ramp things up like crazy at that stage. Yeah, so today we did some testing of a new completely custom networking system. We did some scale testing to see how things were going to work. And yeah, it went fantastically. It went exactly as I hoped that it would, where we had close to triple digits people in a space, and performance was fantastic. Even on Quest 2, even in a very large, expansive space like the Winter Sport Resort, right? That's where we tested. Also, the Nautilus Nexus, if any of you guys have been there, right? That's a new space that's being worked on at the minute that Dead Zed has decided he's declared war on because apparently there can only be
I will
one
declare
aquarium.
war and I will win. Fight me. I want this
Hey,
man.
it's kind of the perfect war, really, isn't it? Because we're all going to benefit, right? We're gonna have two
Yeah.
cool aquarium spaces on the other side of it. So that sounds cool to me. But let me tell you, right? So some of you might have noticed with the new avatar system that we've been rolling out, which by the way, I hope to have an update out for tomorrow to resolve some of the little buggy issues that you guys have been playing with. I was working on a hotfix today. It went through QA, it passed smoke tests. We want to do
Ellie
one very
has
small
logged into
test
the
with it still.
mainframe.
And then, yeah, all being well, that should roll out tomorrow, right? So that should
Nice.
remove some of the quirks you guys have seen with the avatars, like uh, yeah, you don't have to name it Wolf 3D Avatar, for instance, in order to see your own body. And the Visemes should work when they're available.
Big John
And
is here.
the
Everybody
Visemes should
victory
work
Screech
even if
has
there's only
logged into the
one of the
mainframe.
blend shapes that are included with the Visemes. And the mouth
That's
open
cool.
should work as it did in the past on the Ready Player Me's, as well as the soul color. So there's lots of different things that we're going to have fixed in that tomorrow, and we're going to get that out. But there's still some weird stuff going on, right? And I'll be honest with you, I'll put my hand up. I I knew it was going to be weird, and I said, let's go with it, right? We still have these balloons instead of the florks,
Cheryl G1
and
is now
I'm sure
part
some
of
of you
our
have
virtual
noticed that
mischief.
the LOD system on the new avatars has been cranked up much higher than it needs to be, and there's even other things going on where it disables animation and IK when the avatars get too far away. Some of you might be seeing that on me right now. I might not be moving exactly as I'm moving for myself, and that's something I was fully aware of.
I hear you.
Basically, we rolled out a big chunk of the avatar system
Okay.
without all of the
That's
necessary
good, though.
performance improvements in place to make that work well. But yeah, these are all just temporary measures. The large scale testing that we did today, every single person in the room was animated at any distance. You could see them. There was still LODs going on, but everybody had full body IK and animation combos. They also, everybody in the room had Visemes, right? And all of that was working perfectly. Yet we had perfect sound and really great performance in a really demanding situation. So that's pretty much exactly what I was hoping for. That maybe we could take all of the performance overhead off of, you know, everybody else in the room, and cut that down by, you know, 1/30th basically is what we're left with in terms of the overhead that is going on now. Maybe it's not quite like that, right? There's, you know, I'm exaggerating a bit. I'm overhyping, right? Ark, we do that. Is Ark gone? Oh no, Ark got his question in early and he's gone. Right. Anyway, yeah, uh, yeah, things are looking really positive right now. And with this new networking system performing as good as it is, and with the network synced objects being like the cherry on the cake to plonk on there, we're gonna jump into this character controller like tomorrow, and start to integrate that into
Cheryl
the new
G1
system.
is
So there's
wanted in
there's going to
several
be
other
an
spaces.
immensely
Take cover and shoot.
upgraded version of Banter being passed around internally while we test this over the coming weeks. Parts of it maybe might be released in advance of the launch, but worst case, we're looking at 5-6 weeks tops before we're ready to go. And yeah, it's honestly going to be great. You know, lots of things, lots of problems, lots of bugs that are there are just going to be wiped out in one big foul swoop, because a lot of things have just been rewritten from the ground up. And yeah, it's taken a lot of work, but really now we're starting to see the fruits of our labor. Sorry, Barry, I'm waffling. You've got a question? Hit me up.
Just a quick one. I noticed that I have no problem. No, I'm going to rephrase this. Um,
Okay.
until such time as the headsets come in at under 100 grams and a reasonable price, is there
Yes.
is there any momentum for Banter to make uh, the platform available uh, on web or mobile, um, as is being done in Horizon Worlds?
Yes.
Uh,
Gotcha.
is there?
Yeah, absolutely. Mobile, absolutely, 100%.
Okay.
I think we could be looking at mobile maybe by the end of the year. Honestly, mobile
Oh,
is going to
perfect.
become
Okay.
fairly convenient. We would have probably already had mobile maybe, God, probably close to a year ago by now. Although the problem was we needed to rebuild some pretty fundamental parts of the platform internally before we could start to build out all of the mobile parts. And those bits that have been blocking us, those big bits, mainly the new menu and the whole technology around that, are about finished. And once they're finished, then it'll probably take me a weekend to whip up a nice UI, some nice on-screen controls for you to be able to use and move around while you're using mobile, and try and make something that's comfortable and useful and convenient and gives mobile users as much capability to interact with the world around them as possible, right? And how we're going to do advanced controls, I don't know, but we're going to do it. We're going to figure it out. How do we make mobile people able to move their two arms around and do rude gestures, right? That's going to be a big priority. We've got to give them something.
So
But
I think that I was just going to say, I think that's the area where mass adoption or adoption of the culture might take place, because what I see in Banter is a cultural revolution within VR as opposed to more of the same in other platforms. And
yeah,
and so if
Someone you don't
mobile
know,
becomes,
a real
or
human
not just
actually
mobile
joined the
but web
space.
becomes available on any
Now
device,
everyone act
then
like a
of
human.
course it's much easier to explain to people what the hell you're doing because people ask me all the time, "What are you doing?" And
Yes.
fortunately, I can show them if there's a PC around, but I'm not a PC person, so I can't drag them to my house every time. So
Yes. You know,
anyway,
for the
this is
sake of
great news,
for
actually.
the sake of debate, I mean, maybe about the web-based one. I
Hmm.
probably think that that might not be worth pursuing, primarily because performance becomes even more complex
Hmm.
whenever you were looking at a web-based client. And honestly, the truth is, I think what we've seen, at least, right? You've got some competition out there who've been web-based for quite a while, like Spatial, for instance.
Yeah,
And having that level of accessibility, it doesn't seem to have boosted their ability to, gain significant traction, especially within the social VR, the consumer VR space, right? Because they pivoted to that at one point. At one point, they were very focused. They were more like Horizon Workrooms. They were enterprise and all of
right.
those kind of use cases. But there's also, whilst I think mobile is going to be really great, sometimes I'm probably more excited about building for Apple Vision Pro than mobile, right? And the reason for that is because yes, absolutely, it's a massive audience that you can tap into, but you're also going to be placed within an ocean of other content and developers who are really trying to find their way. I mean, I would say honestly, I would tend to kind of survey our users and find this out for sure. But my money would be on that most people who use it in VR would appreciate a mobile client to be able to come in when they can't get in VR, right? I find that
Yeah,
that's probably the most useful use case for a lot of people, right? It's exactly as you say. It's about a culture. It's about a community. It's about us coming together because we enjoy each other's time more than anything else, right? The
yeah,
places that we do it, the platform that it's on, doesn't really matter as much. And you're absolutely right. Being able to kind of grow that, any additional surfaces, any more marketing or merchandising or placement or brand awareness or anything that we can get is always going to be a good thing and is always going to help. And a mobile client is definitely something that makes sense there. But beyond that, right? Mobile client will come on Android first. In the future, we'll have it on iOS. Maybe we'll have it on iPad as well. We'll have it on Vision OS. We'll have it on Apple Mac, Apple desktop platform as well. Uh, I think
cool.
trying to cast a wide net makes sense, right? And we're using a game engine that actually makes that reasonably possible and arguably easy, assuming that we can keep things simple and things don't go too crazy. But most of the hardest parts of those equations have actually already been figured out on a crazy weekend here or there where you slap together a prototype and there you go. Look, there it's running on Mac. Can you believe it? Or it's running on Vision. Can you believe it? So, yeah, by the way, the Quest APK version of Banter runs just fine on your phone, right? It's the same as the desktop version, which works for PC VR, but also 2D mode. You can take our mobile one and dump it in there, and you can use a Bluetooth keyboard and move yourself around. That's the only part is lacking is the convenient on-screen controls that mobile users would be expecting. But otherwise, other than that, everything will just work and just work as normal. And
Great.
even when our new client launches with the menu, you'll have a much better what they call screen space menu for 2D, right? So rather than when you're in 2D and you open the menu and it's kind of floating in front of you, it's going to open up full screen basically over the whole screen, and it will responsively change to whatever the screen size is and try to fill it up
Awful
as best it
Moccasin is
can.
now
So
part of
that's
our
going to make
virtual
mobile
mischief.
better because then you'll have a menu that's on screen a bit easier to interact with. I mean, that's one of the hardest things on mobile is that right now anyway, if you take a shot and throw it onto your phone, you'll see that the menu is pretty hard to interact with. Not
Yeah, for
impossible,
sure.
mind you, but it can be tough for sure. And the new system, yeah, it's just going to be six different shades of ways to find stuff much easier than you can in the current menu. So getting to places the first screen you open has all your online friends, has all the events that are running now, has all the popular spaces that people are in, and it's all on one screen. So you really don't even have to leave the home screen if, you know, if you're just looking to find out what's going on. So yeah, I definitely agree
Excellent.
with you. We should be aiming for as many of these platforms as we possibly can. And yeah,
All right. Thank
I
you
think
so
we will.
much.
Thank you, Barry. Except for web. Web is the one I think could be tough. Web would especially be tough on our content creators because the amount of limitations that might get introduced if we wanted to go down the route of supporting WebGL, right? You'd have to build a whole version of your world for it, and there'd be quite a few compromises to make on that front. But yeah, I won't go any further. I am waffling. Go ahead, Ravioli. You're tiny, but I'm assuming that you've got a question.
Crystal Lake seems
Yes.
pretty Excited
yeah.
Fuchsia just stumbled into our virtual realm.
Uh-oh.
Someone hold their
Oh,
hand.
no.
They look
Bro,
lost.
what the heck is that?
Do I hear lightning?
Bro, what the
again?
heck
Oh,
is
no.
this?
They do look lost.
You're right there, John.
That's okay. Now they're found. They have been saved.
They have been.
Is John
They
not
have been
scary?
saved.
Did I really
Sorry,
look like a
Ravioli.
model hair
Go
fan?
ahead.
No worries. So first off, the new avatar plugin and all that stuff is super great. Like everything is
Awesome.
way easier than RPM. But if you notice, I'm trying to make myself tinier and itty bitty.
Yes.
And I think
Mhm.
Even though I move my bones around and stuff, I
Excited
think
Fuchsia
my
is
eyeball
wanted in
bones are
several other
snapping back up to the
spaces.
physics
Take
ball
cover and
armature.
shoot.
And I know you guys can't change that because it'll throw some weird stuff. But I'm wondering if there's a fix somehow to allow people to be tiny and still keep that big physics ball in place?
I don't
Or is
know
that
if we're in the
impossible?
realm of a fix for that. Unfortunately, I think
Mhm.
a hack might be possible to make it possible. But yeah, you're right on the money. It's the head, right? The IK is
Yeah,
pulling your thing towards
it's
the head,
snapping
and
me
the head is
back up.
obviously up off the ground. I think with the current physics character, being able to scale that is probably going to present a number of challenges. So I think
Yeah.
with the new character controller that we're integrating, that's absolutely something that we could have. And honestly, it then becomes a little bit of a conversation as to how far should we go, and it's an interesting one.
Yep.
And I think we actually had this conversation just the other day internally because there's some
Big John
there's
is
some
here.
gotchas,
Everybody
right?
victory
Basically,
screech is
Mhm.
I don't
here
know
to
how
kiss
many of you have
snowy
ever
butt
attended
cheeks.
Tush Push, but if you can make yourself bigger,
Exactly. Yep.
does that make it harder? Or if you make yourself smaller, does that or
Yeah.
easier? It's and what we're talking about internally is okay, we can scale the character and we can make you much larger, but do we also want to increase the weight of your avatar when you're larger and increase the power of the forces that get applied to you when you do things like jumping and whatever else so that all scales relatively as well? It's like how much of that scale do we want to adhere to proper physics with? And this
Mhm.
really then boils into because I could make myself giant and then maybe my hand is so strong I can just wipe people out by swinging. Do you know what I mean? And it's like how much of
Exactly.
that
Yep.
do we want to be able to do? And the truth is, where we ended up with it was that much like Spider-Man mode or a flight mode that we're going to also have in the future, that maybe these are space level abilities, right? And maybe what we could have is something along the lines of it doesn't matter what height the avatar is that you load in, that maybe we can scale it on the fly at runtime to make it suit whatever your default height is. But maybe then, if the space allows, you could just dynamically scale your avatar down in that space or scale it up if that's what the space allows, right? And that might make it easier for us to have all the fun with all of this stuff, but still make it possible for people to create interactive games that aren't necessarily affected by it, right? So, I mean,
Static
would it be
threat
cool if
arrived.
your avatar were full size in some spaces, but then in other cases you can make it smaller? Do you think that would
Yeah.
work?
Yeah. 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 Totally. Yeah. 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 Because I know. Yeah. You can't change that physics ball. Even you guys were thinking about it is pretty crazy. Because I mean, yeah, tush push would be just one jump with a big guy, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it'd just be too many lightning strikes.
Yep.
But no, I mean it's definitely something. Like I say, we've been thinking about internally, and it's whether the physics, how far we go with the physics part of that, and whether we increase the weight of the character and try to compensate that. I mean that could be really cool on its own, right? I don't know how many of you have ever been to Ben's Toy House, right? Well, Ben's Toy House uses a lot of trickery to make it appear like it can achieve that, and it did that many, many years ago to pull that off. But with a system like this, you could just have it. Maybe the space can change your height, right? The space has the ability to resize you. Maybe it puts you through a
A little
teleporter, and then on the
portal.
other side,
Man, you shrink.
yeah, you're tiny. But there's no trickery
Yeah.
to it. You're just tiny, and then the big, huge people are right there beside you. And that could be cool, right? You could do a lot of things with that.
Yeah.
I feel like, uh,
Alice in
yeah, God
Wonderland, eat
knows.
me, drink me, big, small
Yeah,
stuff.
lots of things, lots and lots of
I
things.
have
I feel like
noticed
you could do
in
that.
the new mirror system that I am where my bones are. Like if you look and
Yes,
other people see me in the mirror where my bones are and not,
yes,
floating. Yeah.
yeah. We're aware there's a problem with that. What we've discovered, or what Aline discovered actually, is the problem doesn't occur if you're using the guest avatar. So feel free to check that out. It must be something to do with our own rig and likely the camera system that's in there. That's the OVR camera system. The OVR camera rig is what we're primarily using, let's say, when you're on an Oculus device. But what we're probably going to, well, what we are going to do is gut all of that out again whenever we replace it with our new character controller, which is all built on top of just pure OpenXR as much as possible, and doesn't use any of that stuff. So that's gonna change up the camera and everything else, and might just make the mirror work, which honestly will be great. But if it doesn't, we've at least got enough information internally to be able to narrow down what is causing that. It's just not
Oh.
a huge
Well,
priority on the list.
I was thinking I was fixed in the mirror, but now you're telling me it's broken.
Oh, it's
Like I'm
broken.
working in
Yeah,
the
yeah.
mirror. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, that mirror's broken. No, you can try it yourself.
Oh,
If you try the guest, you'll notice that you're perfectly lined up with the hands and everything. It's a perfect mirror then. So there's something
I
in the
see.
avatar
Yeah.
that's causing that, and yeah, we need to rectify that. But like I say, the most of the work is actually done because being able to reproduce the problem is 99%
Static
of the
thread
effort
has
more
joined.
often
Quick,
than not.
hide
And at
your
that point, it's
avatars.
just a matter of time before we figure out what's making that mirror so weird. Yeah, it's definitely strange. It's definitely strange. Not the strangest thing I've seen in mirror implementations like that. There was a mirror once that would turn you inside out, and that was unsettling because you couldn't really put your finger on what it was doing initially, but it felt weird, and it got weirder with more time. But yeah, no, thankfully that one is a fairly simple problem. Hopefully, right? And we can get that fixed, and then we can have kind of a staple in terms of a mirror, right? That everybody can use and is just available. And for us, we hope that that can just be a prefab that's in the SDK that you can just drag into your scene and you can position it and test it, and it will work. Uh, Even at edit time, when you're inside the Unity editor, you'll be able to just drop it in and make use of it, right? So yeah, it's not you, it's the mirror.
Cool. 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 Cool.
Cheers, Ravioli.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
IT Tray has logged into the
Apparently, there's a
mainframe.
question coming in on. I'm hearing a question coming in on YouTube. Apparently,
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
what have,
yes. Let
what
me
have they got for
make a
us?
fun myself.
I got you,
Let's see. So this is from Big John, and the
Big John.
question
Sepik
is,
has
what
logged
is
into the
your
mainframe.
favorite sweet baby Ray's flavor?
Oh boy,
You asshole.
we.
It wasn't in here yet when I asked it.
I was going to say where I thought you saw you a minute ago. I guess I can just address you direct. Honestly, they don't have that many flavors over here. It's kind of one of those things that I'm looking forward to the next time uh, I'm over in the over stateside to be able
Discord
to try
Kitty
that,
has
right? It's kind of like
joined.
cheesecake.
Quick, hide your
In Europe, for the most
avatars.
part, you're lucky if you can get one flavor of cheesecake. Just good old
Mm-hmm.
fashioned New York style classic cheesecake, right? But then you go to the US and it's like 50 different types of cheesecake. And you go over and it's like 50 different types of the Zuckerberg's favorite barbecue sauce. So far, I love classic, original. That's my favorite, but it's only because I'm not cultured enough, John. What about you? What's your favorite?
Uh, I don't know. The original ain't too bad. I mean, it's a pretty good one.
Yeah. Do they ruin the sequel?
No, I mean the other ones ain't bad. It's just one of those that like the original was good. And it was like let's just leave it at that. But they're like, nah, let's
Yeah.
do 14 different
16 flavors.
versions, and you're like, oh man.
Yeah. Now I got to try them all. Well, you know what? I'm still going to look forward to them, and I'll probably tell myself that they're all great because they are pretty great. There's one thing that I think Zuckerberg got right, uh, is that Sweet Baby Ray's pretty sick sauce. Sorry, Trey, how are you doing? I'm sitting over here waffling on about barbecue sauce. What can I do you for?
Okay, it's all good. It's all good. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
All right. So I messaged you, but I guess I had asked publicly. Okay. So
sure.
now to get a space featured, is
Yeah,
it required that you use OVR metrics on the Quest 2 only, or can I use my Quest 3? Cause I have OVR on my Quest 3. I don't got it on my Quest 2.
gotcha. Yeah, right now we ask people to aim for 72 frames on Quest 2. And apologies if you tried
Yeah.
to hit me up in DMs.
Yeah. I messaged you
I get a lot
twice.
I get a lot unfortunately in
Okay,
DMs,
it's all
and
good. It's all good.
but
I figured
questions
that.
like
I figured
this,
that.
these are kind of really good questions to just throw into the Space Makers channel, right? Because likelihood is I'll see it there before I'll even see it in my DMs most of the time. Anybody can tell you that
Okay.
if I'm lucky, I can
Overwhelming
maybe catch up
Amethyst
with
is
my
here for
DMs
cuddles and
a few
milk
days
and is all
later.
out of
But
cuddles.
yeah, throw it into the Space Makers channel because somebody else will be able to come in and tell you too. But as it stands right now, our base sort of minimum that we're trying to aim for is support on Quest, right? That's 20 plus million units out there that we want to make sure and support. Count yourself lucky that we don't support Quest 1 because we got a bit of flack for not supporting it, right? So
Okay.
if that was the case, it could be a lot harder to be able to hit those frame rates on a device that's as underpowered, let's say, as the Quest 1 is compared to what we're wanting to do
Okay.
here. So yeah, Quest 2,
All
throw the
right.
OVR metrics on there. If you can get it to 72, that would be great. Honestly, don't tell anyone I said this, but if you can get it close to 60, we'll probably still accept it. But it's like those things, right? You tell
Uh-huh.
somebody, you know, so that
Yeah.
they can overpromise and underdeliver or whatever it is. But
Gotcha.
yeah, the truth
Okay.
is, we see a lot of other platforms where frame rates can be a lot lower than that and consistently lower than that,
Okay.
right? There's a lot of places where frame rates can be like 30 FPS, and we really want to
Gotcha.
avoid
Ragnar,
that
a real human,
because I think it
Okay.
can make
joined the
people.
space. Now
I think it can
everyone act like a
contribute to motion
human.
sickness when the frame rate is low. It certainly does for me.
Okay.
It makes it feel like
Okay.
things are stuttering in
Okay.
my brain.
Okay. And I don't know if somebody brought this up already, but I noticed when like now I don't see double of people anymore, but I see them as balloons now. Like when I
Yes.
get far away,
Yeah.
distance, I see them as balloons. Yeah.
Yes. I mentioned this earlier, in fact. So if you
Oh,
want
okay.
more info on it, you can
413 has joined
check
the
back on the
space.
Okay.
stream. But
Okay.
in a nutshell,
Okay.
we've rolled out kind of half of the avatar system first, and the
Okay.
other half is currently in the works. But the balloons are
Okay.
only
Cool.
temporary. They will be going away
Okay.
very soon. And there's
Okay.
actually a bunch of other things about the avatars that will get a lot better, like
Okay.
iSeams and IK and animations. All of that stuff are going to be much more performant in future. So we're going to have
Okay.
it'll be easier for you to make your space performant because we're going to unlock as much performance in the avatar system as we can, right? And those are the two major competing factors really whenever it comes to that kind of thing is how much do you want to allow people to have their own customization and overhead dedicated to avatars and how much is dedicated for spaces, right? And we've always kind of leaned towards space creators here on Banter and giving them the
Yes.
choice, right? The ability to decide
Yes.
uh, headroom you'd like to allow for
Gotcha.
spaces. One thing we
Okay,
were
gotcha.
actually thinking of, we were talking today actually just about this.
Mhm.
The possibility of being able to have a different
Overwhelming
target
amethyst
frame
is
rate
here.
on one device versus another device, right? The reason that this could be quite useful is because uh, it's a little known fact that on Quest, typically, if you're going to try and aim for a high frame rate, like 90 frames a second, you could get a much, much lower frame rate, like let's say, for instance, 40 frames a second. But if you aim less, aim for 72 or for 60, there's a much higher
Mhm.
chance that you'll be able to hit and remain at that frame rate consistency. So
Okay.
for us, we want to see if we can maybe explore allowing you to set a lower frame rate for, let's say, a Quest 2 device so that they have a better chance of being able to hit that consistently and being able to have a better time overall, right? So
Okay.
there's
Okay.
a bunch of things, hopefully, that should open up more headroom for you as a space creator and make it easier to hit that frame rate.
Okay. Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thank
Alright.
you, Trey.
Mhm.
Hey, Ragnar. What can I do you for?
Hey, how you doing, Shane? No, I'm just listening.
Oh, gotcha. That's the question spot you're in there. So I just thought you had a question.
Oh,
That's cool. Well,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
that's okay. Well, maybe I'll turn it on you. I'll ask you a question. What were you doing before you got on Banter tonight?
Before I got
Oh
on
no.
Banter, I was I was taking care of a few things at the office. That's it.
All right, nice. Finishing up the workday.
Yep.
Yeah, I hear you. Do you work from home?
No.
That's unfortunate.
Well,
I feel like
you usually I could be at home and watch the hotel from home.
gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, I guess
I,
it's different, right? Depends on
Video has
what your
joined.
job is
Quick,
really, right?
hide your
And how you can do
avatars.
that, right? But yeah, I don't know. I feel like
it's a dog hotel. So
gotcha. Yes.
yeah.
So you still need people
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
site. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a shame, right? I think there's obviously been a trend of people with the whole return to work kind of nonsense. I think more people should be allowed to work from home if they can. I think it's an amazing way to do it. That's how we've done it here at SideQuest since day one, 5 years in. And yeah, we wouldn't be able to do it any other way. But
Yeah. Hey,
yeah, let's see.
I wish I could do that.
Yeah, yeah, I hear you. Maybe someday you can operate a robot, and that robot can look
Yeah.
after the dogs. In fact, there are robot dogs. Just putting that out there. They don't
Yeah.
pee, they don't eat, but they're just as friendly.
Yeah, but these are clients that leave like out of the country, so they leave their dogs there for like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and we all
Gotcha.
take care of them.
Yeah, it's great, honestly. I much prefer. I'm a dog person. I'm an animal person. For anyone who is
Yeah, I'm
aware,
an
I'm
animal
a dog
person, so
person.
I prefer to be around the dogs than people. So
Yeah, there you go. That's it. Unconditional relationship there. That's the way forward. Definitely agree. And I
yeah,
much prefer a dog hotel over, let's say, kennels or something like
yeah,
that.
no
I
kennels,
like
no
the idea
kennels,
of
no way.
anything like that. Yeah, yeah. So that's cool. That's awesome. Well, if I'm ever in your neck of the woods, I'll leave my dogs in.
Yeah, you're welcome to.
Cheers. Right. Anyway, okay. I've only got a couple of minutes left, folks. So if you've got any burning questions, you can come up here. I don't think, Faye, we don't have anything. Oh, well, we do have a competition, right? If anybody who hasn't seen that, we've got a new Quest 3
Yeah.
giveaway that's just started tonight, right? That's probably worth a mention. Yeah, and maybe as well, uh, maybe we can all gather around somewhere here and get a photo, right? I wonder how many people we can actually get up onto this thing. Because, yeah, I don't know. We don't do that enough at the events that I'm running, and somebody pointed it out last night. So, yeah, that's definitely another thing we can do before we finish up. But maybe I'll see if anybody has one last question. Maybe I have enough time for one last question. Oh, There we go.
So,
Member of the month.
all right.
has
I figure
sacrificed
I'll
himself.
ask you a question before you ask me a question.
Good shout. Good shout.
So speaking of the new network sync objects,
Yes.
do you think you know how the current one would basically break if a person travels across instances, or back then
Yes.
if you do reload space, it will also break them. So would the
Yes.
new system solve that issue?
Yes, it absolutely would.
Oh,
The main reason that that happens currently is because we've kind of got two systems working in tandem. We've got our own network infrastructure and we've got Photon's infrastructure. So when you move between instances or you check out socket debug and you can see everybody, that's us. That's SideQuest infrastructure. But the audio and everything that's inside of an instance is Photon. So including the network synced objects, right? So when you move from one instance to another, basically you've got two systems that go out of sync. But with the new system, Photon has been removed from the equation. We just have our own infrastructure to worry about. Things become an awful lot simpler, inherently simpler compared to how they are now. And that means that, yeah, it's going to be a less buggy system just out of the gate, because the more complex it is, the more temperamental it is. So we're making it less complex as a result. But yeah, there's also a bunch of other stuff. The way that the network synced objects work at the minute, there's a bunch of nuances about how they get spawned, how they get instantiated, which it makes it really complicated to be able to support almost any type of Unity component on those. But the new system won't have any of those problems. So we'll be able to, yeah, you'll be able to just sync an object, that's it, it's synced, right? And you really won't have to worry about it much else, much beyond that. So yeah, totally you can expect
Amazing.
a completely revamped system, and hopefully will just work. And you know, some of the issues that you faced with the existing one will be a distant memory before you even know it.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you very much. That's great to hear.
Cheers, Vanquisher.
Throw him under
Awesome.
the
Okay.
bus.
Right, we've got yeah, we've only got 2 minutes left. Does anybody want to pile up? We all pile up onto the big screen. We get a big picture of us with all in the sky. Somebody can take a photo, maybe Faye or Aline or anybody who's free.
Oh, man.
Shoseki, maybe you can fly
Some
around.
people are gonna fall in the water.
Yeah, I mean it's gonna be crazy. Here we go.
I'll
Let's
just
get up
hang
here.
off the side.
Okay, and now you just start climbing up on people. Let's go.
I
Just
come
climb
for
up
the
over them.
photo.
Take my hand, Zed.
Whoever gets to the top is the new
No,
owner of
but it
SideQuest.
has
That's right. Whoever gets to the top is
I
CEO
come
for a
for
week.
photo op.
I'll hang off the side. It's too many people.
Come on, man. We can do it. Just hold someone's hand. Brilliant. Okay, so that had to be an admin. That was Jem. Jem did that.
How dare you, Jem?
Oh, I'm standing up here. Oh.
We gotta do math now.
I just follow the person that I think would manage to get that 45 degree.
That's awesome. This might make it in the trailer.
And then I'll do the second one, and everyone just jump up and down. 3, 2, 1, go crazy!
All of us in the air at the same time.
No, grab my
Awesome.
hand. Grab my hand, I am.
Yeah, maybe we should do it like this next time. Just have all you guys up on stage, and I'll just stand down here. How about that?
Ask everyone.
That's my hand, I am. Look.
Okay, I'm gonna pull a Jam and knock you all off it, and then I'm gonna do an Irish exit.
Oh, yeah, my favorite kind of exit.
Everything.
Because it's hilarious.
Your
Jen. I get
Halo
brain
ain't crooked, that's why.
I don't have a Halo one today.
No, she lost
Okay,
it in the
that's
lake.
also why.